The day my mother died, I learned something. I wish I'd learned earlier in life. Grief doesn't make people kinder. It just reveals who they really are. I remember kneeling beside her coffin, fingers numb chest tight, trying to breathe through a pain that felt physical, like something was crushing my ribs from the inside. The room was quiet for maybe 10 seconds. Then my husband's mother laughed. Not a nervous laugh, not an awkward one, a real laugh, sharp and confident. She lifted her glass and said, "Well, I guess this is what happens when you spend your whole life poor." And just like that, my mother's funeral stopped being about her. It became about me being reminded of my place. They didn't even lower their voices. My sister-in-law pulled out her phone, tilted it slightly, and whispered, "This is wild. I've never seen a funeral this depressing." Someone else said, "Did she leave anything at all, or just bills?" My husband stood right there, hands in his pockets, staring at the floor like it was suddenly fascinating. I waited for him to say something, anything. He didn't. That was the first moment I realized I was completely alone in that room. What none of them knew was that in my coat pocket was a letter from my mother's attorney. A letter I hadn't opened yet. A letter that would turn every single word they were saying into the dumbest mistake of their lives. My mother's name was Elena Brooks. She cleaned office buildings at night and sold food from a cart during the day. That's what people saw. What they didn't see were the notebooks she kept hidden under our bed, the spreadsheets she taught herself to make the meetings she took in borrowed clothes, the way she listened more than she talked. Growing up, I thought we were barely surviving, counting coins, stretching meals, learning early how to go without. She let me believe that. She wanted me to understand what it felt like to be underestimated, because she knew one day that would be my greatest advantage. At the funeral, my mother-in-law leaned closer to me, close enough that I could smell her perfume, and whispered, "You know, without your mother you really don't have anything tying you here anymore." I looked up at her eyes burning, and she smiled like she'd won. "We've already talked about it," she continued, nodding toward my husband. "It's probably best if you move out after this. Fresh start for everyone." I wanted to scream. Instead, I nodded slowly and said nothing. Silence was the only thing I had left, and I held onto it like a weapon. I didn't cry until later, alone in my car, hands shaking as I finally opened the letter. It was short, calm, written in the same steady tone my mother used when she was explaining something important. She'd left me everything. Not figuratively, literally. Every account, every company, every property she'd built quietly over 30 years. The total number made my head spin. Enough to buy the house my husband's family lived in and the company they bragged about and the lifestyle they thought made them untouchable. I sat there laughing and crying at the same time because suddenly every insult at that funeral sounded less cruel and more stupid. The next day, the will was read. They showed up early, dressed sharp, already whispering about how fast this would be over. My mother-in-law sat at the head of the table like she owned the place. My husband still wouldn't look at me. The lawyer cleared his throat and started reading calm, precise, professional. When he said the number, the room went silent. Not awkward silent. Shocked silent. My sister-in-law dropped her phone. My mother-in-law's smile froze. My husband finally looked up, eyes wide, like he was seeing me for the first time. Then came the line that changed everything. All assets are to be transferred in full to her daughter Maya Brooks. No conditions, no shared control, just me. The laughter disappeared instantly. My mother-in-law was the first to recover. She leaned forward and said, "That can't be right. She's married into our family. That means this affects us." The lawyer didn't even blink. "It does affect you," he said. "In fact, I should inform you that the company you operate is a subsidiary of Ms. Brooks' foundation. It has been for 11 years. You could feel the air leave the room. My husband whispered, "What does that mean?" The lawyer looked straight at him. "It means your employment, your income, and your assets are now under her authority." They tried to fight it. Of course they did. People who've never been told no always do. They accused my mother of fraud manipulation, said someone like her couldn't possibly build something like this. In court, every document spoke for her, every recording, every contract. The judge didn't need long. Case dismissed. Assets forfeited. Employment terminated. Just like that, the people who laughed at a dead woman lost everything they thought made them powerful. Afterward, my husband tried to talk to me. He said he was sorry that he didn't know that he felt trapped by his family. I listened quietly, then said, "You watched them mock my mother at her funeral and said nothing. That's not being trapped, that's a choice." He didn't argue because we both knew it was true. I walked away from that marriage without raising my voice once. People always ask if it felt good. Honestly, it felt heavy. Winning doesn't always feel like fireworks. Sometimes it feels like exhaustion. I didn't destroy them further, even though I could have. Instead, I rebuilt. I renamed companies. I raised wages. I created programs for people like my mother, the ones everyone ignores. I made sure her name meant something more than a punchline. Years later, when the noise died down, I realized the real victory wasn't watching them fall. It was standing somewhere they could never reach again, calm, steady, unbothered. My mother didn't teach me how to be loud. She taught me how to wait, and waiting changed everything. So here's what I want to ask you. When someone shows you exactly who they are at your lowest moment, do they deserve forgiveness or consequences? And if you were in my place, would you have done the same or gone even further? Let me know in the comments.